After saying goodbye to my dying husband, I left in tears, until 2 nurses' whispers stopped me cold. The sterile scent of antiseptic and the low hum of life support machines were a physical weight on my chest, a final suffocating memory of the room I had just left. Julian, my husband of 10 years, was gone. The doctors had told me he wouldn't last the night, and as I pressed a kiss to his cold forehead, I knew it was our final farewell. My vision blurred, and the long white corridor of the oncology ward stretched out before me, an endless tunnel leading me away from the life we had shared. I hugged my coat tightly around me, as if its thin fabric could somehow shield me from the raw, bitter ache of grief. My shoes scuffed softly on the linoleum floor, each step heavy with finality. I was halfway to the elevators when a low murmur of voices from a nurse's station caught my attention. It was just a whisper, but in the profound silence of my own sorrow, it sounded as loud as a shout. "I feel so bad for her," one voice, soft and sympathetic, said. "Me too," replied the other, a little more matter-of-fact. "But what about that other woman? She was here every day. Just an hour ago she was holding his hand. It was clear. She loved him." I froze. A cold jolt, sharper than any grief, ran through me. My mind, numb just moments before, suddenly raced. "Another woman?" I thought. "What are they talking about?" "It's strange, isn't it?" the first nurse continued. "She'd wait until the wife left, then she'd come in, and he'd always seem so much lighter. He'd smile. We'd all see the difference. They had something special." The world seemed to spin on its axis. The grief that had been a simple, clear pain was now a tangled mess of confusion, disbelief, and a shocking betrayal. I wiped my tears with the back of my hand and slowly, deliberately, walked toward the nurse's station. My voice, when I spoke, was a stranger's, thin and shaky. "Excuse me," I said, my words cutting through their quiet conversation. The 2 nurses looked up, their expressions shifting from concern to startled guilt. I stared at them, my heart hammering against my ribs. "What other woman?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Who are you talking about?" They looked at each other, a silent debate passing between them. The second nurse, a young woman with kind eyes, finally spoke. "Ma'am, we're so sorry. It was unprofessional of us to gossip." "Don't," I said, a new kind of steel entering my voice. "Please, tell me. I need to know." Her colleague, an older woman, sighed and placed a gentle hand on my arm. "There's a woman, dear. Lena. She's been visiting Julian for months. Whenever you left for the day, she would come. They were very close. It was a beautiful thing to see, honestly. She'd read to him, talked to him about their past. It was as if they were the only 2 people in the world. The name hit me like a physical blow. Lena. My mind flashed back to a decade ago, to the few months before Julian and I were married. I remembered an awkward, forced dinner at a gala, a corporate event that served as our engagement party. Julian had been distant, his eyes empty. But then, a woman had approached him, her smile lighting up the room. They had talked for a few minutes, their conversation flowing effortlessly. I had seen the way his face softened, the way he laughed freely. His name for her had been Lena. I had been told she was a longtime family friend. But now, a decade of unspoken truths fell into place. She wasn't just a friend. She was his old love. Julian and I had been strangers, forced together by a business arrangement between our families. My father's company was failing, and his needed a strategic alliance. Our marriage was a merger, a contract signed in blood and ink, not love. We had been cordial, polite, and respectful. We shared a house, a life, but never a soul. There was no passion, no intimacy beyond the social requirement of our roles. We were partners, not lovers. We were a photograph in a gilded frame, perfect from the outside, empty within. I had always accepted it as our reality. I had built a life on that quiet, shared emptiness. But Julian had not, and neither, it seemed, had Lena. A new emotion, powerful and strange, began to overpower my sorrow. It wasn't anger or jealousy. It was a profound, heartbreaking regret. I had been an unwitting obstacle, a living barrier between two people who were meant to be together. For all these years, I had held him captive in a life that was not his, all for the sake of a corporation. The tears that had streamed down my face a moment ago now felt different. They were for Julian, yes, but also for Lena, and for the wasted time. They were tears of apology, of understanding. I thanked the nurses, my voice still trembling, and left the hospital. I felt a desperate need to find her, to apologize for a mistake I didn't know I had made. It took a few days, using my father's old business connections to find her last known address. When I finally stood on her doorstep, the same woman I remembered from all those years ago answered. She looked surprised, but there was a quiet strength in her eyes. She invited me in. We sat in her living room, a space filled with a warmth and personality that our shared home had always lacked. It was filled with books and art and music, Julian's true loves. The air was thick with unspoken words, with the ghosts of a life that could have been. "I know who you are," Lena said, her voice soft but steady. "I'm so sorry for your loss. I truly am." "And I am so sorry for yours," I replied, the words a confession and a plea. I just found out about the hospital, about everything." I told her about Julian and I, about the business deal, about the cold marriage we had endured. I told her how I now understood why he had been so distant, so quiet. I told her I hadn't known, and if I had, I would have let him go. "I was a fool," I said, a tear finally escaping. "I should have known. I should have seen. I was an obstacle, and I'm so sorry." Lena's eyes filled with tears of her own. She reached across the coffee table and took my hand. "Don't apologize," she whispered. "You did what you had to do. We all did. Julian, he told me everything. He was a good man. He loved you, in his own way. He respected you, and he carried that weight with him. For so many years." We sat in silence for a long time. Two women mourning the same man, but for different reasons. We were not enemies, not rivals. We were two halves of a story, finally united in our shared sorrow. We talked for hours, not about Julian, but about ourselves. We learned about her work as a painter, my passion for photography. We found a shared understanding of a life that was now free, a future that, while heartbreakingly sad, was finally our own. When I stood up to leave, Lena hugged me. "Goodbye, Amelia," she said, using my name for the first time. "I wish you peace." "You too, Lena," I replied. "You too." I walked out of her house, the air feeling different, lighter. I had said my final goodbyes twice. Once to the man who was my husband in name, and once to the woman who was his true love. The tears still flowed, but now they were cleansing. I was no longer a barrier. Julian was at peace, and so, finally, was I. I walked toward the rest of my life, alone, but no longer haunted by a love that wasn't mine.